Hey, y'all. Welcome back to the last episode of Countdown to Election Week. For this week, we'll be back on Monday with another episode. That's November 2nd. Today, we have with us Diana Gomez, Glenn Smith, and Ed Espinoza. And we have a lot of really cool stuff to talk to y'all about because today had some pretty historic news. But before we get into that, I wanted to do a quick icebreaker with the team. We've all been working countless hours towards this election. And I know for myself personally, I need music to fuel my fire. So for Diana, Glenn, Ed, what is your election fight song that you have on repeat over and over again to get yourself through this? Diana, why don't we start with you?
My favorite one, which is my favorite one around this time of the year, which is when it came out, was Ariana Grande's "Thank You" Next. Yes.
Nice. Mine, I similarly have a GOTV song that I've listened to most election cycles for the past decade. And it's a song by TV on the radio. And the song's called "Wolf Like Me." It's just got a lot of energy. It's real fast. And I feel like it's a good kind of gets your blood flowing in these final days of the campaign.
Mine's an easy one. The Beatles, "A Little Help from My Friends."
Nice.
That is pretty good. Mine is We Didn't Start the Fire, because we didn't start the fire, but hopefully we're going to put it out.
Yeah.
So something really big happened in Texas politics today. Actually, this morning before I woke up. Ed, do you want to tell me what happened today?
Texas set a turnout record with more than 9 million votes cast in the early vote. So that is not only an early vote record, that is a record for Texas elections in history. And we still have a day of early vote left to go and election day. So it's really exciting. And I got to tell you, my heart really filled up when I saw that, because for years we've known Texas as a low turnout state. We say it's not a red state, it's a non-voting state. And we have flipped the script on that this year. And it's because of so many people getting engaged and showing up and making their voice heard at the ballot box. And you're seeing it around the state. It's just a really exciting time for Texas politics right now. And as we've seen, the whole world is watching us.
Yeah, I know it, but we've been getting calls from Belgium, Japan, France. It's amazing.
That's right.
Who exactly are these voters that are turning out for us in big numbers across the state? Glenn, do you have any insights?
Well, it's all kinds of voters, if you want to know the truth. It's people who have been eligible to vote but haven't registered and haven't voted. It's new voters, quite a number of brand new voters that hadn't been registered before, young voters, people of color in every major urban area. I mean, that really it's voters from all segments of a very diverse Texas voting in huge numbers. We've never seen anything like it, and it's exciting to see. Because the nature of your question was who's doing it? Well, basically everybody in Texas is doing it. So I applaud them,
Oh, 100%.
It's been amazing seeing the change in my, it's not a small town anymore, but I grew up in a small town in Hays County, Kyle. And when I was a kid, it was mostly cows and trees. But now we have a lot more homes and a lot more people. And when I started, when I started voting, wasn't really a long line. And honestly, there were a lot of folks wearing Confederate flag memorabilia. And I was one of the very few people of color in line when I was 18 and I voted for the very first time. But this last time I'm seeing people lining around the block to vote here at the city hall. A lot of young people, a lot of people of color, not so many Confederate flags anymore. A lot of folks excited and cheering. And it's beautiful and wonderful to see how this community, this county is changing and growing. I know we mentioned it before, but I'm also very proud of that vast change that has made Hays County the very first county to break their 2016 early voting record in the nation.
So just to remind everyone who's joining us right now, today we broke a historic record in voter turnout in Texas, period. Not for early vote, but just this is the most Texans have ever voted ever. And remember, if you have questions for our expert people, Diana, Glenn, and Ed, drop them in the comments. So we just covered how a lot of folks have been voting. Where are these votes coming from? Where are these new voters? What geographies are they coming from?
I'll take that one. They're a lot of them are coming from the urban and suburban places, and we know that Texas is the fastest growing state in the nation. It has been for a decade. And where are those people moving to? Well, they're moving to the big cities and to the areas that are close to the big cities. So, for instance, here in Austin, a lot of people are in Hayes County, where Diana is, and some are up in Williamson County, just to the north of us. And some others are in areas that are in Travis County proper, but are a little farther out, those suburban areas. And they've become really key to changing the face of Texas. Now, you can look at that in the Houston area with Fort Bend County, which is gone not just purple, but is pretty blue at this point. And then up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area in the Metroplex, you've got, of course, Dallas and Tarrant, but also Denton and Collin County playing important parts. And of course, there's so many. I'm not going to name all 254 counties or even the top 20 for that matter. But, San Antonio and a lot of other things, a lot of other counties in that area are important too. But it's not just the people moving here, right? We used to talk about the sleeping giant being Latino, the Latino community coming of age, being eligible to vote, and starting to participate. And that is happening. That is a giant that's not really sleeping anymore. And then you have the new giant, so all these new people moving here. And then in addition to that, you have young voters who are turning out in droves this year. And between those three buckets, you have communities of color, you have just a diverse array of people who are showing up and making their voices heard. I'll stop there and let some other people speak, but it's really just such I have so much enthusiasm for all of the engagement that we're seeing right now, and it looks like other voters are as enthusiastic about it at the moment as well.
Yeah, Ed, I was playing bingo right now as you were describing who these new voters are. People who just moved here, check. Young voters, kind of check. I'm kind of young. And people of color, definitely check. And you're right. This record voter turnout, which is historic in Texas history, is a part of these new, awakening giants. Glenn, Diana, so we're seeing this new group of voters. They're from all over the state in these city and suburban counties. What's the impact that they're going to make on this race, up and down the ballot?
It's going to be huge, of course. I think we may get beyond 11 million voters. At that point, there's a minimum parity between the parties in the outcome of the election. But first, a word about what may be behind this turnout. Part of me wants to say just that the voter suppression efforts have been louder and more overt around the country and here than ever before. And I have a feeling that in Texas, it's like you want to get people to vote, tell them you don't want them to vote. And they tell you to go jump in the lake and go vote. I think there's been a big backlash against those efforts. They're still ongoing. But when you look, and another big difference, by the way, has been elected officials throughout the state committed to voting rights and opening the doors to voting in ways that have never been opened before. And it's happened in the big counties and the counties adjacent to the big counties. And I think people are taking advantage of that. And it's attracted them to participate in the process in ways that didn't happen. And Texas has always been two things: a low wage state enforced by state law in many cases, and a low voting state. It's not disconnected from the economic consequences of being a low wage state. Both of those things are going to change. We're going to change the voting first, and just watch what happens to wages rise in Texas.
Yeah. Dan, I want to come to you in 1 second for a question, but we have a question from our audience. Jackie Martinez, coming from Facebook, wants to know, what was the record and where are we now in the count? Ed, you mentioned this earlier, but do you mind giving us a refresher really quick?
So the record was set in the 2016 general election. It was 8.9 million. And the new record, where we are which is where we are right now in the count, is just over 9 million. I think it's like 9.02 or something like that. And like Glenn said, I mean, we could be on pace for 11 million. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here, but we're in record territory now. Every vote that's added adds to the record at this point.
Absolutely. So Diana, over the past few months, you've been interviewing, state house, congressional candidates across the state. What are they saying about this record turnout and how they're feeling about this election?
Yeah, I mean, I guess Glenn started talking about what are some of the factors that are turning people out. Another huge factor are the candidates. People really love to see a lot of the diverse faces that are running to represent them. One example is Gina Ortiz-Jones. I had such a great time interviewing her. If you want to go back and catch that interview, it's on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. But she was talking about how folks are so sick and tired of the failed leadership in Texas, how the governor and other folks have failed in COVID, the lack of relief. And, people are really excited to have representatives go to DC to really represent us, our values, and finally get us that relief that we deserve. And Gina, this is not her first time running. She lost by such a close margin. And this time she's running against a new person who really doesn't represent Texas values. So she's got a really, really great shot. And we're super, super excited for her to go and join another person that we just recently interviewed last Friday, which was Veronica Escobar, who's doing a really great job out in El Paso and out representing Texans and helping her community as much as she can.
And just to add, Gina Ortiz-Jones is the congressional candidate running in the 23rd district, which goes from San Antonio to West Texas, this enormous landmass to crisscross. But she's running real strong there, and that's currently held by a Republican who's not running again. And I think Gina is favored to win this seat at this point.
We'd love to see it. We have another question coming from Facebook from Fausto Chavez. He's wondering, and I don't know this answer. Apparently, Kamala Harris is in Fort Worth. Does anyone know what time she is going to be speaking or addressing the crowd? I'm not sure.
I haven't seen the schedule. She's doing Fort Worth, Houston, and the Valley, and I'm not sure of the times at any of those places.
Yeah, same. I don't know.
When we find out, we'll let you know. We'll post it on our Facebook, our Twitter, and our Instagram, so you can follow us there and get updated about all the best progressive news. As we say at Progress Texas on a recurring basis, progressive values are mainstream values. And this election here in Texas is showing us exactly that. So today is the last day of early vote. And we're already hitting records. 9.1, I think you said, million voters have voted in this election. We need to make sure our friends and families are still turning out. Ed, Diana, Glenn, do you have any last words for our audience before we see them on Monday?
I'd like to hear a little bit more about some of the candidates that Diana talked to this cycle. Sure. and how this high turnout is affecting them. But Diana, you've had some pretty good interviews over the past few months, and yeah, we're going to start voting for.
Yeah, so many people. I could talk forever about a few of the highlights. Were the very first candidate that I interviewed when starting here at Progress Texas was MJ. And I was so nervous to talk to her because I'm just so excited about the possibility, the likelihood of her replacing John Cornyn. It would be such a dream because most Texans don't know who John Cornyn is. And it's pretty spectacular that he sees MJ as a real threat. And that is I believe, one of the main reasons he's starting to show his face again is because this is one of the first times he's had to really fight hard for this seat. MJ has a really great chance. He hasn't really done much for Texans, and MJ is a fighter, and we know that once we elect her, she will fight for us and for a better health care for Texans in the Senate. So we're super excited we were super excited to talk to her, and we're excited to send her over. Another person that I was really excited to interview was Christa Castaneda. And she's running for the position of railroad commissioner. I didn't really know too much about this position and about railroads in Texas. And do we still have them, or what's going on with that? I learned that it has very little to do with railroads and a lot more to do with the regulation of oil and gas in the state of Texas. That is so important, especially for folks that are really interested in these industries, in jobs in these industries that have been so impacted lately, and also in climate and how these industries interact with the climate. So it was really fascinating to learn more about her, not only her position, but her vision for regaining jobs and to make sure to regulate those industries in a better way that they haven't been before.
There are some really amazing candidates that are running on the progressive side of things, and the turnout is speaking for itself. So Ed, I feel you want to say something?
Oh, no, I'm good.
I got a last word. I do have last word I'd like to say.
Yeah.
I was reminded of this we had one of Texas' great labor leaders, John Patrick, pass away a couple of days ago, and it reminded me to thank all those people that have worked tirelessly over years and even decades to bring the progressive movement back in Texas. This didn't happen overnight, and there are people that gave blood, sweat, and tears day in and day out to make something like this possible this year. And I don't want those efforts to be forgotten or belittled because they made this happen.
Yeah, people like John Patrick, who Progress Texas gave a Lifetime Achievement Award to in 2017 when he officially retired.
Right.
People like that have really been the backbone of this movement in the days where it was just really tough to push for progressive policies and progressive reforms in Texas. Just stood tirelessly fighting for it. And that's, those really paved the way. Those efforts really paved the way for us to get here today. And, we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. We've set some records, but we haven't done the hard work is still in front of us. But we wouldn't be here where we are right now without folks like John Patrick from the labor movement. And of course, so many of our progressive allies out there as well.
I think what I would want to end on is that so many folks have already voted, but there's so many that still haven't. And so just to remind your family, to remind your friends to go out and vote. Today is the very last day, and then we have November 3rd. And also to remember that, like we've talked about so many days this week, is that it's not just the presidential race that's on the ballot. We have a long down ballot list, and we've interviewed a lot of those candidates. When you go a bit further down the list, you can see other candidates like the State Board of Education that decides what goes into public schools. And we interviewed some of those folks, and like Dr. Marsha Webster and Rebecca Bell Metro, and they really are going to represent what Texas wants and Texans want in our textbooks, and that is super important. And so we can't skip those candidates on the ballots.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go to whole ballot, start to finish.
Start to finish. And if you don't know who's on the ballot, you can head over to our website, www.progresstexas.org. We have an overall progressive voter guide. And when you go into that, you'll find all the regional ones, depending on where you're living in Texas. Of course, I live in Austin. I have friends who live in San Antonio or El Paso. So I can send that regional one to my friends. When you're telling your friends and family and community to get out to vote today, remember, today's the last day of early vote. If you get in line before the polls close, remember to stay in line. If you're there before it closes, you're allowed to stay till you vote. They cannot tell you to leave. And one really important thing, if you're feeling like there's any obstacles or challenges towards you voting, make sure you call a voter protection hotline. So we have a blog on our website that has all this information, but I'll really quickly give you the English and Spanish numbers. So in English, it's 866-OUR-VOTE, and in Spanish, it's 888-VE-VOTA. So make sure that if you're in line, you stay until you get to vote. If you get there before the polls are closed, and if you're feeling any obstacles, make sure to call a voter protection hotline. Get out and vote. We're making it happen. We had a record turnout today. This early vote in Texas. We can do this. And I'll see you all on Monday for our next episode of Countdown to Election Week. Have a good one. Good weekend. Get out the vote. Thanks, y'all.
Thank y'all.